Obviously, just from literally being in the ring with him, sharing the ring, working with him, there was adjustments every day. He's not someone that's just showing up and just, you know, in and be like, all right, let's, go through the motions and do the same thing. He was making adjustments. I was catching him with shots the first day we sparred. The second day we sparred, those shots were not landing. I had to figure something else out. I feel like the pressure that Spence is going to be able to put on, and because one thing is, I did check Spence's punch resistance. I can definitely say, I sent some missiles his way, and I honestly felt like he responded well. Anytime I did, land something, he wasn't like running away. He wasn't like buzzed, falling all like, he eats the shots well. It's I still saw a recovered Spence is what I think. I think his punch resistance is there, and the work ethic, and like I said, just the work that he's doing in the gym is not of someone that's clocking in, trying to show up for a check and trying to be like, oh, let's see what we can do. Like he's fully locked in. He cares about improving each and every day. And
as fight night draws closer, Brian Mendoza has revealed surprising inside information about Errol Spence Jr. that could shape expectations for his blockbuster clash with Tim Tszyu. His comments offer a fresh perspective on what fans might see when the two finally meet in the ring.
I can't just, I'm not just using the same bag of tricks every day. I have to go home from the sparring and think about, okay, well, what am I going to do next time? You caught me with this. Those are signs of someone that is really thinking, still loves what they do. He has a passion for it, and that, along with, I feel like this time that he's had off has helped him recover. So I feel like that mixed with his punch resistance, being there, and just Spence being Spence, man. I think he's going to give him a hell of a fight. And
building on that discussion, Jacob DeLeon believed the fight would come down to mindset as much as skill. He suggested Errol Spence Jr. was still recovering mentally from his loss to Terrence Crawford, while Tim Tszyu had lost the confidence that came with being an unbeaten champion. DeLeon said that once self-doubt crept in, the fight became much harder.
I see this fight. I mean, boxing's boxing. It's a mental game. Both of these guys are still, I think, recovering mentally. Spence hasn't been in the ring in I don't know how long. Still was coming off that accident when he did fight Crawford. I don't know if he ever fully recovered from that. But even with Tszyu, man, I think there's an aura about you when you're a world champion. Like when you're untouchable. Like, I don't know, like if you saw Conor McGregor in the UFC or Kamaru Usman, there was a time where, like, they were on. You know what I mean? There was no doubt in their mind that they were gonna lose. Their hand was gonna be raised at the end. And I think once you lose that and you start doubting yourself, it's a completely different ballgame.
The boxing analyst described Errol Spence Jr. as confident and in top form ahead of the fight. He highlighted Brian Mendoza's warning not to underestimate Spence after sparring with him. The analyst also noted that Spence trained with Jermall Charlo under Ronnie Shields and entered camp in excellent condition.
He's still extremely confident in himself and his abilities. He brought in Brian Mendoza to help spar, and in that sparring session, Brian Mendoza stated, if y'all overlooking Errol Spence, y'all are drastically mistaken because he gonna show up and show out. Now, remember, Brian Mendoza himself fought Tim Tszyu, and he lost to Tim Tszyu. But, Errol Spence is bringing in world-class sparring partners. He got Jermall Charlo there. Errol Spence, is now training with well-renowned Hall of Fame trainer Ronnie Shields in Houston. Errol Spence is in complete shape.
Taking that confidence a step further, the boxing analyst believed Tim Tszyu would fight with frustration after promising to stop Errol Spence Jr. and make a bigger statement than Sebastian Fundora did against Keith Thurman. He predicted that approach would backfire, ultimately leading to Spence stopping Tszyu in the 11th round.
Tim Tszyu is going to fight frustrated, right? He's talking about he's going to stop Errol Spence. He's going to do the same thing worse than Sebastian Fundora did to Keith Thurman, etc., etc. And I think Errol Spence is going to stop Tim Tszyu by the 11th round. But let me know what y'all think.
Sean Zittel expressed concern about Errol Spence Jr. heading into the fight, admitting he remained skeptical about his condition. He pointed to changes in Spence's speech following his car accident and dental injuries, while acknowledging the explanation behind them. Zittel compared the situation to James Toney, noting that although speech can change, it does not always reflect a fighter's ability inside the ring. Even so,
I'm respectfully, man, this is not an easy thing to talk about. I'm concerned and skeptical of Spence heading into this fight. I think something about his speech, and people say he has he's always had that Texas drawl. After the car accident, he had to get different teeth put in and he said that affected his speech too. And I'm reminded of fighters like James Toney, who even when their speech wasn't quite the same at cruiserweight that it was at middleweight or super middleweight, he was still whooping ass and still beating Vasily Jirov and knocking out Evander Holyfield. But you notice the difference in his speech pattern. And with Spence, that's something I picked up on. Other people that I talk to don't seem to pick up on it the way I do. They say, hey, he's
Zittel believed Errol Spence Jr.'s size, jab, and work rate could trouble Tim Tszyu if he returned in good form. However, he ultimately leaned towards Tszyu, arguing he was the sharper puncher at this stage. Zittel also pointed to Spence's poor balance in his loss to Terence Crawford as a lingering concern.
You know, I think Spence is the bigger guy. I look at how active lead hand of Fundora, who's obviously much bigger than Spence and younger than Spence, how that really gave Tszyu problems, as did the length of Bakram. And you would think Errol Spence, if he's in good form, can take advantage of some of those things with more work rate, with a better jab, with being the bigger man, even though he's never fought at 154. But I'm leaning towards Tim Tszyu to win this fight. And again, I said it when we had Rahman on, I think he's the sharper puncher at this stage of their careers. I saw Spence getting off balance a lot in the Crawford fight. And yeah, he's fighting probably the best fighter of this generation in Terence Crawford. That'll do it sometimes. But I also just saw a fighter whose balance wasn't good on the punches he was throwing. So,
in contrast, Sean Porter believed Errol Spence Jr. would perform much like the fighter he was before facing Terence Crawford. He viewed Spence's decision to fight Tim Tszyu in Australia as a reflection of his fearless mindset and felt little had changed since his prime. Porter ultimately backed Spence to defeat Tszyu.
This dude will perform the way we've seen him perform before that fight that he had with Terence Crawford. We understand what that fight was. And I think that classic Errol Spence wanting to go over to Australia to beat Tim in his own land, his own city, you know, in Australia, his country, whatever the case may be, is one would refer to that as being ballsy, but it's Errol Spence. That's just who he is, you know. I'm inclined to believe that Errol Spence beats Tim Tszyu because I feel like there were prior to a fight with Terence Crawford, I feel like he would have beat Tim Tszyu, and I think that, to me, I don't believe that much has changed.
Sean Porter also leaned toward Errol Spence Jr., believing he still had enough ability to defeat Tim Tszyu, despite nearly 3 years out of the ring. Porter felt Spence's experience and overall skill set would be enough to overcome the long layoff.
B-side is more towards Tim. I'm definitely towards Errol. I just feel like Errol, even though, you know, we haven't seen him in 3 years now, I think he still has more than enough to beat Tim.
That confidence was echoed by Ronnie Shields, who remained fully convinced Errol Spence Jr. would make a strong comeback. He rejected claims that Spence's best days were behind him, arguing the lengthy layoff had allowed him to recover physically. Shields also praised Spence's defensive skills and sharp technique, predicting he would silence the critics once he returned to the ring.
But everybody's right who say he's not going to be the same. He's going to be better, so much better than he ever was. You know, his body is well rested. He feels really good. You know, everything is going great. And as you saw today, you know, his punches are fluid. You know, he's strong, and he's throwing the punches the way I think he should throw them. And, you know, defense is looking good. So everything is going great. And, hey, everybody that's thinking he don't have anything left,
Not everyone agreed, however. Jeff Horn backed Tim Tszyu to win, expressing hope that he would bounce back with a strong victory. Horn believed Tszyu had what it took to respond after his recent setbacks, though he acknowledged the outcome remained uncertain.
I think Tim Tszyu for the win. Going for Tim. I hope he can get the victory and bounce back, but who knows?
Sharing his prediction, Terence Crawford viewed the matchup as a close one and admitted either fighter could win. He praised both Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu for competing at an elite level while noting the physical wear they had accumulated over the years. Despite that, Crawford leaned towards Spence, believing his all-around ability could prove decisive.
Well, I'm not, 100% confident, I just know, the caliber of fighter that Errol is, just like I know the caliber fighter of Tim. You know, I think both of them have taken a lot of damage in their career so far, but I just think, Errol skill-wise, just edge.
Roy Jones Jr. also viewed the fight as a pivotal moment for both Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu in their pursuit of returning to the top of the sport. He acknowledged Tsyu's power as a major factor, but noted that Spence had already proven himself against elite punchers throughout his career. Because of that, Jones believed the outcome was far from certain.
Tszyu in Australia, what are your thoughts there?
I think it's a really good fight too. The good thing about the fight is that they both are on the way back up. They're on the rebound. So he's a rebound guy fighting another rebound guy, which makes it kind of equal, but Tim Tszyu is a hard puncher. So we'll have to see what happens. I think Errol is used to dealing with hard punchers, but we'll see what happens.
Even with those predictions, another analyst stressed that Tim Tszyu remained a dangerous and high-level opponent, not merely a comeback fight for Errol Spence Jr. While acknowledging that Tsyu's recent defeats had slowed his momentum, especially the stoppage loss, he maintained that those setbacks did little to diminish the threat Tszyu still posed inside the ring.
Tim Tszyu ain't a tune-up.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? He's actually a very skillful fighter. He just has some losses now. Yeah. Losing to Fundora, getting stopped or whatever, that hurt him a lot. And
Rolando Romero, however, saw it differently by picking Tim Tszyu to come out on top against Errol Spence Jr. Romero also revealed his interest in facing Spence in the future, turning the conversation toward a potential showdown if Spence returned to winning form.
Just in regards to the weight for this fight, Tim.
Oh yeah, 158, I can't complain.
The fight's up 58.
158. Yeah.
Can I get the leftovers?
Of course.
Hey, Tim.
Of course. Oh, yes,
That belief in Tszyu was shared by Tassie Brown, who predicted he would stop Errol Spence Jr. within 9 rounds. Brown emphasized that his pick was based on Tsyu's mindset rather than personal loyalty, believing he fully understood the significance of the opportunity. In his view, facing a high-profile name like Spence would motivate Tszyu to produce one of the biggest wins of his career.
And I do believe Tim will beat Spence. I'm not saying it because he's a friend and I want him to do it. I believe that Tim Tszyu will beat Errol Spence. I believe that he'll stop him inside 9 rounds. I'm not taking nothing away from Errol, but I think Tim knows this is it. Career's on the line here. You got the big fish, a name that you wanted for a long time.
Focusing on strategy, Radio Raheem emphasized that Tim Tszyu's patience could be the key to the fight. He believed Tszyu needed to stay composed and avoid letting emotions dictate his approach, warning that forcing the action could leave him vulnerable to clean counters and shift the momentum in his opponent's favor.
Tszyu on notice, this is not some ceremony fight. Is putting himself on notice that we're not taking the soft edge either. We're gonna needle this guy and tune him up and maybe make him angry enough to fight outside of his best interest. He might be baiting him into being angry because he will definitely run him into those jabs, run him into his right hands if Tszyu is too over aggressive.
Furthermore, Teofimo Lopez backed Errol Spence Jr. to deliver against Tim Tszyu, calling it one of the most compelling fights on the schedule. Lopez also highlighted Spence's preparation, noting that he looked to be in excellent shape heading into the highly anticipated clash.
It's a dream come true. Errol Spence, Australia, Tim Tszyu. Heck yeah, I really want to see him win. I don't think so. I think Errol Spence has been truly non-stop working out. He already looks like he's in shape now.
Similarly, looking at the matchup, the analyst favored Errol Spence Jr., believing Tim Tszyu was the right opponent for his comeback. He argued that Spence had used his time away to fully recover and recharge, leaving him confident that the former champion would return with an impressive performance.
I'll say it right now, and you can take it to the bank. I'm just saying,
take it to the
I
bank.
think Errol Spence would be too much for Tim Tszyu. I think this break is going to serve Errol Spence well. I'm so keen on that. I just think that he needed this break, and we're going to see a great version of Errol Spence.
That optimism was shared by Tim Bradley, who believed Errol Spence Jr. was entering a new chapter of his career, rather than returning as the same fighter. Even so, Bradley felt the long break had allowed Spence to heal from years of punishment, noting that he looked healthier and physically refreshed ahead of his comeback.
Oh yeah, Errol Spence. Yeah, Errol Spence is back. He back. He ain't the big fish no more. Nah, not the big fish no more, man. But the one thing that I'm looking at and I analyze him and I'm looking at his ass, I'm like, his eyes do look better. The they cross, you know what I'm saying? The both ain't low like that either. I'm like, man, this motherfucker before he fight, what the hell going on with Errol Spence, right? So, you know, his eyes look better. It looked like the rest. The rest was good for his body. You know, when you training since you a little boy, man, early, and you train all them years, man, and having that time off, man, I'm pretty sure it done wonders for his damn body.
Building on that belief, Bradley also favored Errol Spence Jr. to defeat Tim Tszyu. He argued that Spence's relentless pressure, disciplined technique, and high work rate would gradually break Tszyu down. Bradley further pointed to Tszyu's reported struggles in sparring with his younger brother as another reason he expected Spence to secure a late stoppage.
For Errol Spence, he's one of those fighters that know how to fight. He know how to fight. Errol Spence know what the hell he got to do. Errol Spence is the master of the basics. He know what the hell he got to do. Ain't nothing gonna change. He gonna let them hands go. He gonna take it to Tim Tszyu, you know. And Tim Tszyu is one of those guys, you know, stand right in front of you. He ain't one of them guys that pick up his feet and move. Nah, Tim Tszyu little brother better than him. He better than him. Tim Tszyu brother probably be whooping his sparring. Yeah, he be whooping his. I already know he do. Yeah, lefty, he be moving his head side. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I know he be whooping his in the gym for real, but they don't be talking about it. But yeah, I think Errol Spence, I think he gonna beat Tim Tszyu. He gonna knock him out. Tim Tszyu is done. He 31 and he done.
Peter Badel viewed the matchup as a career-defining moment for both Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu. He believed Tszyu was fighting to restore his standing after recent setbacks, while Spence aimed to prove he remained an elite fighter despite his long absence. Badel felt the outcome would have a major impact on the future of both careers.
I think it's a beautiful crossroads fight. You've got two guys who seemingly are finished in the eyes of some. I mean, Tim, people think he's on the wane, and we haven't seen Errol Spence for 3 years in the ring, 1,009 days to be exact. So, look, that raises real question marks at age 36. Is the truth no longer the truth? And look, I think it's the moment of truth for Tim. I think if Tim loses this fight, it's over for me. I'd retire if I was Tim. But I think Tim can find something in himself, especially with Jeff Fenny training him. I do think there's been criticism of the new union, but I think it's the right union for this fight. And I know there's been controversy about whether it's the right call, but I think Jeff's got the right motivational tools, because I think at this stage of Tim's career, I don't really think he learns a lot technically.
Garcia turns his focus to Errol Spence Jr., questioning how a legendary fighter will bounce back after surviving a horrific car crash, a brutal knockout loss, and highly publicized personal struggles outside the ring. It casts a dark cloud of uncertainty over whether the American icon is walking straight into a trap.
I think it's more about Errol Spence, which I know, and you know, he's from Texas, from the United States. So definitely, you know, I support his career. I've always been, you know, I've always said he's a great fighter, one of the best to do it at the welterweight division. But he's had some personal problems where, you know, he's admitted himself that he's had a drinking problem. I don't know how bad it was, but it must have been pretty bad from him accepting it and actually advising young fighters not to do it. He also had some really bad loss against Crawford and a very bad car accident. So I think the question is about him, you know, how is he gonna come back? How is he gonna react?
Camilleri concludes with an honest reality check, admitting that while his loyalty lies entirely with his countrymen, he would never gamble his own livelihood on the outcome against a peak version of the American star. It leaves the final verdict shrouded in deep suspense, hoping for a devastating victory, but fully aware of the lethal threat across the ring.
You know, it's a hard one.
I can't really give an opinion.
Yeah, I can't. I want Tim to win. I really do want him to win. You told me to bet my house on that. You know, I'm not going to put my house on Tim. I think Spence at his best was a better fighter than Tim, but I'm 100% Team Tim Tszyu, and I hope he destroys it.
To that, Ben Damon admits he finds this matchup almost impossible to predict because there are too many unanswered questions surrounding both Spence and Tszyu. He feels the long layoff, past setbacks, and uncertainty over each fighter's current form make it difficult to know what to expect once the opening bell sounds. Rather than favoring one side, Damon believes any prediction is little more than speculation until both men step into the ring.
I don't know what happens in that fight because I simply don't know what version of Errol Spence we're getting. I've got no idea. It could be any number of versions of a man who has been a truly phenomenal and obviously a superior and world-class fighter, but he's coming to Australia after this long break with all of the other things that have gone on through his life. and he's taking on a hungry Tim Tszyu, a man who has been beaten badly on a couple of occasions himself, and who we cannot be sure what version we're going to see of him either. So this is just anyone who tries to make a prediction on this fight is guessing, because nobody can possibly know. It is just one of those things where you're going to have to watch it to find out how it goes down, because if you think you know, you simply don't.
With predictions split and opinions coming from every corner of the boxing world, all eyes now turn to Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu. Only one question remains: who will rise to the occasion when the bell rings? Let us know your prediction in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more boxing coverage.